What's up, y'all? Sparta here. I want to make my review, finally, of the LG V40 here. And I want to preface this by also saying that I'm not using this on any sort of network. It's an AT&T locked phone, and I use T-Mobile, so I've been using this on Wi-Fi, and I'm coming at it in terms of how it's been using it on Wi-Fi. So if you've been looking for something like data speeds and all that stuff, I can't really talk about that. So if that's something that obviously most people value, but some people also use their phone as some people also use phones as spare phones and use them on Wi-Fi. So I do want to talk about that, I guess, in that aspect. So I will get to that here. So I've had a long history with trying to get this phone ever since it's been out, right? Ever since it got released, right? I was supposed to get it I was supposed to be able to pre-order it, but I couldn't do that. I was supposed to get it through T-Mobile, through Jump, wasn't able to do that. I've even made videos talking about how I was supposed to, but didn't do it, couldn't do it, until I decided to go on eBay and just buy one, right? And I'm not against buying anything on eBay. I've actually gotten I've gotten a few phones from eBay. I've got my Note 5 from eBay, for example, which was another phone that I was basically only able to use on Wi-Fi. I was able to put my T-Mobile SIM in there, but I wasn't able to get data. I was only really able to call and text people. But I was able to use it as technically still use it as a phone, but not use it on Wi-Fi. I mean, not use it on LTE at all. So this isn't the first time this has happened. But yeah. But I will still be able to talk about call quality and stuff like that, because I have used like Skype and all that and stuff like that on here, so it's not something that's devoid of me from using this phone at all. It's not. I can still say that call quality is still really good, despite the earpiece being offset like it is on like the G7 and stuff like that. The speaker is the receiver is still really good, and it gives you it's clear, it's loud, it's not tinny, it doesn't really distort, it sounds good enough. But let me talk about, for those of you that, call and stuff like that. I don't really call people that much, so that's why I tend to skip it, but and when I do call, I do use my Bluetooth headset, so it's kind of hard for me to gauge that, I guess. But let me run down the specs here. So you have your Snapdragon 845, 6 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of internal storage. I believe there are variants, but they're in Korea. There are 128 gigabyte variants, and in different colors, like the carmine red and stuff like that, which I really did want, but they don't have it here, so couldn't get it. Where was I? Yeah, 64 gigabytes of internal storage. You do have your micro SD card slot, and it's expandable up to 2 terabytes of internal storage, which there is a 1 terabyte SD card coming out soon for $400. I'm not getting it until it drops in price. So there you go on that aspect of it, I suppose. You have your not 6.4-inch 3K POLED display. And I say 3K because it is 3K. They advertise it as Quad HD plus, and I do have qualms with that because while it is indeed true, since I guess the side to side resolution is technically not the 4K, it's only really the top to bottom, it can still be counted as that, and I don't understand why they don't, I guess. But, it's whatever. I'm not going to talk about that right now. I'm just going to solely focus on everything else that has to do with the phone itself. OLED display, a lot of people like that. On this particular phone, it's a really good display. And I'm not necessarily a big fan of OLED. I don't like Samsung's AMOLED all that much. I know every reviewer's like, oh my god, the deep blacks and the juicy colors, and like, I don't care, because in my experience, especially with something like camera, the OLED displays tend to they tend to put this oversaturation stuff on their software to make it so that you take a photo of a white background, the whites in the background come up as yellow, and I just don't like inaccurate color representation in my photos, so I just do not. I've never been a fan of Samsung's AMOLED displays in that department. Detail-wise, they're crisp. You put a good enough wallpaper on there. I'm not really a big proponent of putting a black background on everything, because that kind of that somewhat defeats the purpose of having the super high quality display and not really having a freaking wallpaper on there. But, to each their own. People do it to save battery life. And I guess if you can make that argument that it does, I've never really had it. I've done that a couple times and it never has really saved battery life for me. But if it did for you, cool. So yeah. Snapdragon 845, 6 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigs of internal storage, a 3300 milliamp hour battery. You have your OLED display made by LG. Dual cameras on the front, an 8 megapixel and a 5 megapixel, very akin to the LG V10. On the back, you have your triple camera setup. You have your f1.5 aperture, 12 megapixel main camera. You have your f2.4, 12 megapixel telephoto lens. I always forget the name of the freaking telephoto lens. You have your super wide angle 16 megapixel. Did I say 12 megapixel telephoto? 12 megapixel. 16 megapixel wide angle lens f1.7. You have your fingerprint sensor on the back. You have your LED flash, no laser autofocus, which I believe they're doing away with. The G6 does have it, but the V40 doesn't, which I do like laser autofocus a lot, but to be fair, the focusing on this phone is very good, so I'm not really like saying it's a bad thing to take it out. So yeah. On the right side, you have your power button and your SIM and your SD card slot right in there. You have your volume up and down buttons, very clicky, very satisfying to use. You have your Google Assistant button, very clicky, very satisfying to click. This is the black variant, Aurora Black. It has a blue tint to it. Double tap the power button, you can get into the camera. And you have your facial unlock, which works very well as well. It's not going to do it behind the camera, so I'm not going to talk about that. Right, I'm not going to try and demonstrate it because it won't work very well. It never really does. So, yeah. But I can say that it works very well for the times that I have used it. Even in the dark, if you have your phone display at a very bright setting, it will work pretty well. So it's not going to work like your LG G8 will, though, eventually, where it has that sensor to work in the dark. So keep that in mind. You have your Google feed on the left here. You have your typical LG UX. I don't know what version it's on, but whatever. Let me talk about performance now. This phone is a very smooth phone. I'm going to do a quick comparison here, right, of these two devices here, the LG G7 and the V40. So let me go into one app called Smart Cleaning, right? It's instant on the V40. It takes a bit on the G7. I press optimize phone at the same time. It's quicker on here because I haven't been using it all that much. But yeah, as you guys can see, there's a bit of a hitch on the G7, whereas on the V40, it's pretty much instant to get in and out of the app. So that's something that's very nice and is very convenient. This phone is very smooth. It feels very nice to use. I haven't really had any hiccups that I can remember. If I did, they were very small and minor, and the phone there hasn't been any an app stalled or anything like that. Barely has that happened on any phone that I've had within the past 3 years or anything like that. So it's not something that I typically bring up. And I will say, if I don't bring something up that's typically a negative for a lot of people, 9 times out of 10, I just didn't experience it. It didn't happen to me. So yeah. You got your 3,300 milliamp hour battery in this phone, right? You have your USB Type-C connection. You have your headphone jack, and you have your speaker grill, which I'll get into both of these in a little bit. Quick Charge 4.0 on this device. This phone charges really fast. Pretty, a good amount. A good amount of speed for whatever you may need. I didn't mean to rhyme there, and I accidentally did it again. But yeah. It's a very fast charging phone. Fast overall, to be real. 6 gigabytes of RAM doesn't feel like it's not enough. It feels very plentiful. Even compared to something like the 6T, which I'm recording with right now. At times, and I will get into this in my V40 versus 6T video, the V40 will indeed outpace the 6T at times. And I have a whole bunch of games on here, as I do on the 6T, and it's just it's not night and day, but it's very comparable. What else? Speaking of gaming, this is a very good phone if you want to game. Some games will not be optimized. Like, say if you play the Dissidia mobile game, the Dissidia Final Fantasy mobile game, it won't be full screen. Well, maybe they changed it. I doubt it, because Square is very late with stuff like that. Do I even have it on here? I don't. Oh, I do. It's right there. Okay. So I'll go into here, right? As you guys can see, it's not full screen. And I'm going to get out of this because it's doing that refresh rate thing. But where it's showing lines go across the display. But yeah. That, aside from a few games, it does indeed. Most games do display in full screen, but some just don't. And it's crazy about the Dissidia game because it came out last in the last couple years, so I don't understand how it hasn't. I forget when the Dissidia NT game came out. I think it was 2018. But yeah. What else? The notch doesn't the notch really doesn't bother me. Like, especially with a phone this big. On the G7, after going from back and forth between these phones, it is more apparent on the G7. But and that's not really because of the LCD display. It's only really because it's a smaller phone and it's a pretty big notch too. But nonetheless, it doesn't really bother me. So I will indeed footnote that and just say that the notch doesn't bother me. It may bother you. That's entirely up to you. But notches don't really bother me as much anymore, especially since every phone is doing it. Most high-end phones do it now. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me talk about haptics. That's something that a lot of reviewers don't talk about really, unless the phone has really bad haptics, like the Razer phone and stuff like that. Razer Phone 1 in particular. I heard that a lot, but ever since the V30, LG phones have been having really great haptics. Like, this phone is no exception. Sometimes it feels like I'm actually typing on a keyboard, like a legitimate keyboard, and it feels really good. Like, I'll go into, I guess, there's not really anything. How's everyone? I don't want to know. But I don't like doing stuff like that, really. But yeah, haptics on this phone are really good. You don't really have to worry about that if that's something you notice. I began to notice it a lot more after using phones after like the V30, like going from V30 to Note 8 and Note 8 V30, switching them off. It's very noticeable when you go to a phone with lesser haptics. And if you're not used to that, you won't notice it. But yeah, haptics are really nice on this phone nonetheless. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Let me talk about audio. This is the LG phones pretty much since the V10 corded, well, V20 more, but V20 in the corded department have been undisputed. There haven't really been, unless they're dedicated, phones or devices made to be for audio, but even then, LG phones tend to beat out a lot of them. And that's something that's really nice if you want a phone and a audio device, right? Come the G7. The G7 comes out. Has the Hi-Fi Quad DAC. It has aptX. It has all your aptX HD, all those codecs, LDAC and stuff like that. It has all that too. Same as this. It has the DTS:X 3D surround sound, which is great. It's very like song dependent, so I wouldn't say use it for every song, but it's great for the very atmospheric or very like, I'd say a album to test it out on if you have any of these phones is Tech Nine's Planet album. That's an album I would say definitely I interchange between using that feature on both of those on that album. And that's a very nice album, I'd say, overall. So yeah. But where the G7 really innovated on overall is the boombox speaker. Now, for those who don't know what the boombox speaker is, basically the frame of the phone acts like a resonant chamber. You put the phone flat down on a surface, and it'll widen the sound on whatever surface that you're on. And sometimes, and even when you have like other stuff around it, it'll tend to like vibrate whatever item is right there too, and it'll like ricochet sound off stuff too. I will say the G7 is indeed better with that. It's louder, but what LG did say is that they lowered the volume on here to make it more balanced. So it is indeed a more balanced experience on the V40 compared to the G7. But nonetheless, this comparing the iPhone 8 Plus, right? I compared, the speaker on that with the G7, and the G7 just trounced it. Like, it just sounds tinnier, it sounds muffled compared to the boombox speaker. And what the G8 is doing with having, the screen also be a speaker as well, that their crystal OLED technology or whatever they're calling it, because the G8 is having an OLED display too. They're doing a lot of very cool things with audio, and that's something that I say LG took from HTC and is now the champion of now. But yeah, you'll never be disappointed with the LG phone when it comes to audio. You can go back to the V10 and still not be disappointed. The V10 beats out a lot of phones today too. But to detail it, I will say that songs I've been listening to in my 23 years of living on this earth, right? Say your UGK Dirty Money album and stuff like that. You can hear the individual levels of a song, depending on the song. Because a lot of songs have a lot of sound, a lot of different sound layered on top of it, so it's harder to tell. But specific songs that I've listened to the past couple days, I've heard the layers, and it sounds really it sounds insane. And I didn't notice that with the G7. I didn't notice that with the V30. I didn't notice that with the V20. The V40 gave me that experience. And I like that a lot. I really do like that a lot. But yeah, audio on this phone, you won't be disappointed. That's something that I say if you're an audio person. I'd even wait for the G8 V50 to see. Because if you don't want a big phone, and as you guys can see, I have big hands. So if you don't want a big phone, I'd say wait for the G8. And you'll have your complete audio experience there. Even get the G7 if you want it. But I believe they're going to have the carmine red color at T-Mobile, at least, for the G8. This is the raspberry rose color. And I really do like this color. Like, it comes off as pink sometimes, but a lot of times it's like a really nice looking red. And that's something that I really do like. I like unique colors overall. But yeah, audio overall, phenomenal. There's no qualms I really have with it. Some songs it'll amplify, like, depending on the song and depending on, how the song is compressed and stuff like that, it'll make it sound better. Like, if it's a really badly compressed song, don't expect much out of it. It's not going to make, like, a very terribly compressed MP3 sound like a FLAC file or anything like that, but it's going to make stuff sound better. I will say that. But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as that goes. Let's talk about camera. Another thing the V series was sold on, right? The camera. Like I said, your two front cameras on the front. One is regular, one is wide. It's not a super wide angle lens, but it's wide, right? An 8 megapixel and a 5 megapixel. I don't know the apertures. I'm slowly not caring about talking about apertures because every phone tends to have the same apertures on their lenses. So I'm not really going to talk about that. Especially on the front cameras, because front cameras tend to be bad anyway. So I'm just going to skip it on them. But yeah, 8 and 5 on the front. dual 12 and a 16 on the back. I know the apertures of these is f2.4, f1.5, and f1.7. So there you go on that. This phone is really good when it comes to camera quality. That's something I've never had an issue with LG phones. A lot of reviewers talk about, oh, the camera's not as great as the S whatever or Note whatever, and it's like, and this isn't me talking down on Samsung phones. I use Notes, so that's not me talking down on Samsung phones at all, but I've taken far better photos on any LG phone that I've had when I've had the Note 5 and the V20. I like the V20's pictures better. When I had the V30 and Note 8, I liked the V30's pictures better. I mean, it was a bit of a wash. Sometimes I'd be like, yeah, they're even, or I would slightly like them better. And that's mainly due to how they process it, right? I don't like the oversaturation that Samsung does, and LG doesn't do that at all. They may saturate photos, and they no longer have the thing where they over sharpen them. So let me go to, I guess I'll go to this here. I'll show y'all some food, I guess. But okay, let me check which camera this was taken with. f1.5, so this is the main lens. 12 megapixel. Now, it's going to be very difficult to tell because I'm recording this on a phone and showing you with the phone screen, but it's very detailed. It looks very nice. I took this, I got this at Sparrow's at the Mall of America. That's typically where I go. And a lot of this also has to do with lighting as well. Keep that in mind. The lighting in this particular area isn't great. It's not really that great. So the pepperoni slices might look a bit orange-ish, but that has nothing to do with how the phone took the picture. That just has to do with lighting. A lot of the times when people say, oh, the camera is terrible, they tend to take photos in like these poorly lit areas, or take a selfie with the sun literally behind the subject. Like, they do that a lot and then want to say a camera is bad, right? I don't do that. Now, I do take photos of suns and stuff, right? Of like, say if it's a cloud, say if there's clouds and a sun or something like that. Did I take that with the V40? I don't know if I took that with the V40, but let me check if I have. Now, because some of these I probably took on the, I definitely took some of these on the G7 because I switched my, I put my SD card in here. So, yeah. Yeah, I put my SD card in here. That was in the G7 into the V40. But yeah, as you guys can see here, because let me check. Was this taken? This was taken on the G7. Because I have 1.6 aperture. But yeah, photos on here are great. You get your typical manual photo mode and video mode. I put a video up, like, I think a week or two ago, where it was a CineShot showcase. And I scrubbed a bit badly, so there are some things that look like the subject is kind of is still moving with the background. That's because I scrubbed a bit too. I didn't scrub that well. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. It's not the phone doing it badly. It's me not being good with the scrub action. I guess. But yeah. So let me talk about battery life. What's the point of having a phone with a great headphone jack, great audio in general, great cameras, and all that stuff? Oh, wait, before I move on, though, I will talk about this. In video, what you can't do is you can't start recording a video in one angle and go into another. You can't do that anymore. You can do that on the V40, but you can't do that on here, and you can't do it on the G7. I don't know why. I hope they change that with the next iterations and bring that feature back, because that was a very cool feature to have. But that's the one thing about the camera that I say kind of stinks, is that you can't do that. Whereas on the 6T, you can do that seamlessly. You can switch between both the telephoto and the regular lens. But shit, I can even do it right now and show you guys. You can do this, and it's very smooth. Whereas you can't do it on the... Maybe it's because it's 3 lenses. I don't know. But, you know, it's whatever. Battery life. 3300 milliamp hour battery. Snapdragon 845. Quick charge 4.0. This phone... I don't know how much screen on time I have at the moment. Let me check. 2 hours and 8 minutes. And it's at 53%. I can probably eke out like 5 hours of screen on time, maybe 6, if I try. But I easily can at least get 6.5 hours if I run it all the way down to at least 4%, right? And it'll be totally fine. This phone is really good with battery. I use it a lot during work for podcasting and stuff like that, connected to my LG Tone Studios, and they're really good. Like, at the end of my shift, basically, they're like at 65%. Or if I've been using it a bit more heavily, maybe like 59 and stuff like that. So it's very good when it comes to battery life. Nothing is very, like, noticeable when it comes, like, it's comparable to the 6T, and the 6T has a 3700 milliamp hour battery. And the 6T sometimes would end up at, like, 50. So, there you go. But yeah, battery life is very good on this phone. There really isn't anything else I could talk about that I would say is bad, or the only gripe I really have is that, you know, camera stuff, where the video, I can't switch angles in the video. That's pretty much it. I don't really have updates. I don't know if it's due to AT&T and stuff like that, but I haven't gotten an update yet. But, you know, typically these carriers will do that. They will slow down updates. So it's not really that big of a bother to me personally. It is what it is, whatever. Even on the 6T, updates are slowed down. So what can I really do? But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as this video goes, though. Let me know what you guys think about the V40 in the comment section below. I'm probably not going to get the V50 because it's too similar to the V40. I'm probably just going to get the G8 because the G8 is doing enough different from the G7 for me to be like, yeah, I'm going to go that route. Plus, I just got this. So it's like, it would be dumb. It would be stupid for me to do that, to be completely honest. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you have this phone? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comment section. This is Sparta. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for support. Hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday, whatever time of day it is area. Have a good one. If you like this video, like it, dislike it. If you dislike it, share it with people that are interested in this sort of content. Thanks for 603 subscribers. Let's try and get higher. I would like to get monetized again. It would be nice. It's not a goal, really. I don't really care all that much. I make enough money as is, so it's whatever from work. So, yeah, but yeah, have a good one, you guys. I really do appreciate it.